Being a student teacher in music is a very exciting time. Because on one hand, it's the culmination of all the classes and training you took at the university level, all leading up to the moment where your time as a college student is almost over. And on the other hand, you actually get to teach on a daily basis, something that you've been dying to do ever since you stepped foot on campus as a music education major. But what is the experience like? What do I need to know before I step into my internship? Well, in this video, my wife and I discuss what our internship or student teaching experiences were like, what we learned, and what we wish we did differently. So without further ado, let's dive into today's featured conversation. Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Zachary Savinsky, and today I am super excited to welcome onto the channel for the first time introduced as my wife, Leah Savinsky. Leah, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Zachary. How are you?
I'm doing good. Excited that we have this opportunity to talk about student teaching.
Very excited. And this is the first time that we get to talk about anything YouTube related on camera as a married couple.
Yes, it is.
Woo.
Woo, woo.
Woo, woo.
So, as I just mentioned in this video, we're talking about student teaching. We just graduated, both of us, from Western Michigan University with our degrees in instrumental music education. Just had our internship, our student teaching experience from January to April of this last spring semester.
Yep.
So, excited that we have a lot of experiences to talk about. A lot of stories.
A lot of stories.
So hopefully these insights will help you if you're a future student teacher, or if you just want to come along for the ride and enjoy the conversation and see what our experience was like. We welcome that too. This is actually going to be the first of a 2-part series that we're doing on student teaching. This first video is going to be all about our experiences, all the things that we went through. And then in the second video, we're going to be talking more so about our tips, the ideas that we have for future student teachers, what we suggest, having just gone through the experience. So super excited to go through this today. But first, just real quick, I wanted to talk about kind of what student teaching is for those who don't know what this internship includes. So our student teaching, it takes place the last semester before graduation. So those 4 months in the spring semester, or sometimes the fall semester for some other students. That last semester before graduation, it's after we've completed all of our other requirements for in the education department, in the music department. We've completed all those classes, all those trainings, and then we get to finally go into the classroom. We teach on a daily basis in a school district and learn from an assigned or chosen mentor teacher. And with all of this, it just depends on what university you're at as far as the timing, as far as the schedule, as far as how much choice you get in where you're at. It's all different at every university. I would say this is generally what it's like in Michigan.
Sure.
But it could be different somewhere else. All right. Now that we have that out of the way, we're going to kind of divide this video up into a few parts: teaching, building relationships, and performances. And then at the end of the video, we'll talk about our regrets and our final takeaways. Okay. So starting off with teaching, the actual teaching part, the nuts and the bolts of things. Leah, what do you have for us?
So I'd like to begin with my experience of what teaching was like for me. Being on the podium and teaching actively in front of real students in real time, not just in a 20-minute segment, but over the course of an entire week or even just 2 days next to each other, that opportunity to be on the podium in front of students exposed my weaknesses a ton. Things that I thought I struggled with in pre-internship experiences were actually great because, for one, that was a year later in my teaching in my college career. But also it's a different feeling when you get to see where the students came from in your previous lesson, and then you get to see them the next day. Yes. And then the next day after that, and you get to be a part of that progress. It's not switching off instructors in between that.
Yeah, you're the only teacher, the only student teacher in the room. I mean, we might trade off, at the beginning at least, trade off with our mentor teacher as far as who's doing the teaching for each class, but you're there every day still with the students. It's actually really, really exciting.
Yeah. At the beginning of your internship, it's a lot of observation of your mentor teacher, kind of how they do procedural things in the classroom. And then eventually when it happens in a discussion, whenever you're ready, usually depending on who your mentor is, they'll ask you, are you ready to get up on the podium? And it'll happen in small chunks.
Or they'll just throw you onto the podium.
Yes.
I've heard stories from other past student teachers and our experience. That wasn't our experience. It was, are you comfortable doing this?
It was a gradual thing for us, but that is definitely not the case for everyone. And that's better for some people too.
Yes, for sure.
To be thrown up there. I began with warm-ups and slowly entered my way into rehearsing pieces that we were doing for festival season. So we were a little bit late on the process in choosing one of the pieces for festival. And so I got to experience what sight reading was like for sight reading some marches for festival. So that was kind of interesting that I got to see them all read and see their different levels of everything. And I got to observe that. And then I know we'll talk about this later, but I actually got to conduct the march for festival.
Yes. Yeah. That will be up in the performance section of the video.
Yeah.
So you mentioned it exposed your weaknesses teaching on a daily basis. Specifically, were there any weaknesses that you wanted to talk about that it exposed? I know I already know what you're going to mention.
Yes, I do. I do want to talk about this, that in the context of the march that I had conducted for festival, I really struggled with tempo. And this is really not just a march related thing. I just knew that through this internship, one of my weaknesses was maintaining a consistent tempo.
Yeah.
And as much as I hate that, I really wish that was something I was good at and still am good at, but it's okay. But that's just not one of my strengths right now. That's something that I know that I have to work on.
Absolutely. Yeah. We all have those things.
Zachary, did you have something that you would like to share on this point?
Yes. So coming from a percussion background, obviously I'm really well versed in all the percussion pedagogy and all of the intricacies of percussion. I could teach that forever. But being in this internship on a daily basis really exposed my lack thereof of woodwind and brass pedagogy. You're saying that as the flute player right now. But
I can say the same thing about percussion related things though.
We can all say that about all the instruments that we haven't played for years.
Yeah.
Especially coming right out of college. Like you get really good at that instrument, and then once you become a teacher, it doesn't matter. You're not teaching students of that level.
Yes.
Not yet, at least.
Yes.
So in this internship, it really exposed how much further I still have to come with woodwinds and brass, and just knowing the specific problems and specific solutions for things I encounter in rehearsals.
And there's those things for me in woodwind and brass things. I'm a woodwind player, and so brass tendencies, like the specific pitch tendencies or specific ways to solve an embouchure problem, or what to do if a clarinet squeaks. Like, you just got to learn those things. And that's what the internship is for.
Going into our next discussion point, still under the teaching category, something that I really came to learn or really the mindset I had going in, thinking the job is all about, it's like 80% teaching and then 20% the administrative stuff that goes on. But the job is really 80% administrative and 20% teaching. Now, granted, like the numbers, like whatever, it doesn't matter the specific number.
Some people would say 95-5. Some people would say 70-30. Like,
exactly.
Sure,
the actual number doesn't matter. The point, though, is that the job is mostly administrative.
For a beginning teacher, that's like all you need to know.
Yes. If you really want to be a good teacher, like, you can't just wing it on the podium. You have to still spend time with that teaching, even though the job is mostly something else. Like, you can't just wing it with the teaching.
That's what people are seeing from you.
Right.
That's the outward observation of your students and parents and administration and other colleagues.
Right. And this isn't necessarily something that's student teaching specific, because like you still have your mentor teachers taking care of their own program. Like they are doing a lot of the administrative stuff. But at least in my experience, I got to be included on a lot of those conversations about why he did certain things administratively and those processes and those procedures. So that way, when I do take on my own program, I knew what to do.
Yeah.
Which I'm super grateful for.
Yeah.
But mostly administrative, not a lot of teaching. But you still can't autopilot on the teaching either. It's still probably the most important part. Just doesn't take up most of the job.
Yeah. So how did you learn that lesson, Zachary? And how did you, what kind of lesson that you really want to share with people about that?
I think the main lesson that I took away from that is you have to spend time outside of being in front of students to further develop as an educator. Like I just mentioned like a little bit ago, I realized I was weak on woodwind and brass pedagogy. But if I just said, oh, well, I can only practice it when I'm in front of the students, that's a detriment to the students. So I have to spend time outside of the school day trying to further my knowledge base on pedagogy for those instruments. I can't just leave it in the classroom. I actually have to spend time outside of the school day to get better at it.
So I feel like a lot of us already know that much, but what kind of specific things did both of us do outside of the classroom to make us better teachers?
A big thing is attending professional development. We both went to, this was before our student teaching, but we have gone to the Midwest Clinic. We went to our state music education conference, the Michigan Music Conference. I specifically had spent time doing a lot of research online and really reviewing the documents that I got at the Midwest Clinic.
Sure.
From
Actually
those presentations.
Studying those.
I legit studied this document I got about all of the, if it sounds like this, it's probably this type of problem for woodwind and brass pedagogy. There was a document that I had like that.
Just because you went to the MMC presentation doesn't mean that you actually know the information.
Exactly. You actually have to spend time after the fact and really internalize it. So doing that type of stuff has really helped a lot.
Sure.
So Leah, going into the next point that we have, what do we have?
So in terms of teaching, one of the other ways that I learned to improve myself, and this just came out of habit. I already knew this going into it, but it really did come in handy. I asked myself questions very often. Questions like, what's my goal for this week? What's my goal for this specific lesson? Evaluating my lesson at the end of the week. That was the only way that I saw the band actively growing musically. There's my mentor, there's many ways to do this, but one of the ways that my mentor and I had collaborated and came up with the system on our own to kind of reflect is to record the band at the end of the week. This is closer to like a few weeks before the concert in the concert cycle. Once you can get through the piece and you've learned everything, then you record it. We recorded the piece on Fridays, and then after school on Friday, we sat down and listened and wrote down everything that we thought the band could improve on as we read through the score while listening. And that can look like a bunch of different ways. You can write down whatever you want, but that provided an opportunity for me to ask questions. What am I hearing? Was this specific lesson earlier in the week able to tackle and solve that problem that I heard? Is that problem still here? It's practicing my oral skills too. Like, am I actually hearing what I wanted to hear? Because the recording is a lot more
honest,
much more honest. So that was just really, really helpful, that once I started asking those questions and thinking methodically about was that lesson actually successful? Did I actually achieve that small objective in that one lesson to meet this larger goal? If you're not thinking about that, you're just going to get lucky. And like half the time, maybe things will get better.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a huge thing. I actually wish I had learned that earlier, because I started doing that later on, but I wish I had started doing what you were doing sooner, was actually recording the ensemble and evaluating at the end of a week, what did they grow on and where can we improve next?
Yeah.
I wish I had developed that sooner. Moving on to our last point in our overall teaching category.
Okay.
Curriculum is everything. Teaching, it boils down to basically your short-term and your long-term goals for your individual classes, macro goals for the year, semester, micro goals being for a concert cycle, a week, a day, etc. But that curriculum, knowing where you're going, is the big thing in teaching, I would have to say.
Yeah.
And I'm completely on board with that fact.
Yeah.
If you don't know the end goal, what the end product needs to be, not with just how a piece should sound, not just coming there to rehearse, but coming there, what do these individuals as musicians need to know by the time they are a freshman in high school? What do they need to know by the time they are done with their 6th grade year?
Yeah.
What do they need to know? That is the big thing. Curriculum is everything.
And we saw this differently in different districts.
Yes.
But this is the age-old story of how do you develop curriculum through a 6th through 12th grade band program when there are many teachers involved.
Yeah.
When you're not the only one.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's different learning styles. There's
different teaching styles.
There's different teaching styles happening. It's confusing and it gets frustrating. And there comes a point where I think we both saw that all you can do is what you can control in your classroom. And so if students walk in not knowing something that you wish they learned in 6th grade, teach it to them then. Don't get frustrated about it. Just teach it to them then.
And like all of this, it's so easy to just say like, yeah, like we get it. We believe it. Like going into our student teaching, like we learn it in methods courses and all of that. We've learned it before we understand it, but you don't really see its importance until you are actually doing the thing on a daily basis.
You know something, but you don't know it.
Right. You're aware of something. You're just aware of its existence. But then once you get into the nitty gritty, then you're like, oh, this is important. This is something I need to care about. And this is something I need to have an opinion on. That's the big thing.
Because you've seen it and lived it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
All right. We are going to be moving on now into our next overall category or subtopic, building relationships. So we will be talking about how we built relationships or our experiences with that with both students and fellow staff members outside of our mentor teachers.
Yep.
Something that we both have on both of these things, with students and with staff, we both had very different experiences with this. So Leah, what was your experience at your school with building relationships with students?
Students specifically, it took me a long time to get to know them and for them to warm up to me in my student teaching experience. It was probably 2 months until I felt comfortable with the fact that they felt comfortable with me.
Yeah.
So you go in thinking that they're immediately going to laugh at all your jokes. And they surely did not. They just kept staring at me. And I was like, I feel so silly right now. But you have to keep doing that. Because they thought, they could have thought I was like 35 years old. And I'm not.
That was the experience of some of our peers.
Yeah.
I remember like coming to senior seminar class every week to talk about like where we like gathered and talked about our experiences thus far. And like some of our peers were like, yeah, they think I'm like 40 or like 30.
It's so
weird.
Like a senior doesn't even have a concept of the age. And if you're a high school or middle school student out here, that's just something funny that that we're aware of as teachers and that we didn't know going into our student teaching. That's funny that now you can just be aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, I learned that the students won't be all in at the start of when I first stand up in front of them.
Yeah.
It will take time for them to trust me, and they have to get to know me, and they have to like me and enjoy being around me as a teacher before they can trust me and before they'll buy in to anything that I'm saying. They got to trust me first. And that takes a while, depending on where you're at. It depends on the culture of the place you're in, and it's different everywhere.
Yeah, and that's not something that's exclusive to student teaching. That's starting a new job somewhere.
Yeah.
Like getting those students to be on board with your expectations and your vision. Yeah. Like that's something every time you start at a new school, that's the experience.
It's hard.
Doesn't matter if you're teaching, if you're just a marching band tech either. It's the same thing.
You have to bring the energy when no one else is giving you energy back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Fully agree with that.
Zachary, what was your situation like with the students, getting to know them?
So I had a very different experience, but also kind of similar in a different way though.
Okay.
So my student teaching was at a school that I had already been at for 4 years teaching marching band. I was a marching band tech there, percussion caption head, was there for a while. The students all knew who I was. And obviously I had a good relationship with the percussionists.
Sure.
The students I had been around the most, but all of the wind players and all those students, they all knew who I was, but I didn't know who they were.
You didn't know their names.
I didn't know a lot of their names.
Yeah.
Which was, pretty shame on me. I was, especially when like towards the end here, these last few years, the band has been on a smaller end. So shame on me for not knowing their names, but also I wasn't forced into a situation where I had to. I was just the percussion guy.
There's no shame in that. That's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Then you were the student teacher and you had some sort of connection with them, but you didn't have this, like, you were not their teacher.
Right. The big thing for me was it was an awkward thing for at least the first couple weeks, because they already had this pre-built trust in me. But I didn't know their names. I didn't know who they were. So
they're like, this guy knows what he's talking about. I'll listen to him.
Yeah, exactly.
But you're still acting like very awkward up there because you feel like they don't know you.
Exactly. That was the big thing that I faced. So I realized like it was a big priority for me. Like the first couple weeks, it only took me like a couple weeks at the high school, which is where I had been teaching them, to learn all of their names. Only because I had a general idea of like, because I heard some names called out.
You had a general idea of a lot of people's names that it's either you know their name or you don't, Zachary.
I had a general, like I knew some of the names. I just didn't know faces. So it was just, I know.
I don't know why you're talking about this.
But it just took me some time. Okay. It took me some time.
Okay. That's
but
fair.
It only took me like a couple weeks. The middle school took me a little bit longer. I was starting from scratch. So it was more of the experiences that you had at your school was more of the experience I had at the middle school level. Yeah. At the high school though, it was, awkward at start.
So I was warned that, you're not going to know everyone's name by the end of your internship. And it was a few weeks in and I knew everyone's name. So that was kind of terrifying for me, that I was like, how am I going to do this? There's like so many students, especially if you have elementary music, you're seeing
so many students,
hundreds of students a week. But you'll figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. All right. Moving on to the next portion. We talked about building relationships with students.
Okay.
Now it's on to building relationships with fellow staff members at these schools, not music staff members, although some of our relationships were with music faculty.
Yes.
But I would say we both had a fairly similar experience with building relationships with other staff.
So I wish that I had introduced myself to other staff members in my building independent from my mentor teacher. So like my mentor teacher and I went out like to either staff meetings or like there were staff events, like a staff lunch or something.
Yeah, for sure.
That like a group of students had planned for the staff, like once a month or something.
Teacher Appreciation Week was a big thing with that too.
Yeah. There's opportunities where you will get to see other staff members, but in general, music staff is kind of isolated from the rest of the building.
Yes.
I know that you really felt that.
Yeah.
I really just wish that I had struck up more conversations with staff in the building for me to get to know them personally as not, the band director, student teacher, but
Right.
as Miss Keller. I was Miss Keller at the time.
At the time, yeah.
Yeah. And telling my story to them. And that did happen, but I wish that had just happened a little bit more because they weren't going to reach out to me. They didn't want to make it awkward for me. So I had to do that. So I wish that had happened more, but I had to be the one to make it happen.
Right.
And that's the case everywhere.
Exactly. And it's the case for student teaching. It's the case for new jobs. You have to be the one to make those relationships.
Yes.
My experience is similar, very similar, because didn't have basically any relationship with staff members outside of the neighboring classrooms, which there weren't many. It was the choir room.
Yeah.
Basically. And which is exactly my point. The band room in the building I was at, the high school, was very isolated from the rest of the building.
Sure.
So I came in through the back entrance to the school. Only teacher I ever really saw on a daily basis at the high school was my mentor teacher.
There's literally no one else near
There's
you.
no one else in the area of that building. So,
And you were only there 2 hours of the school day.
right, because I started my day at the middle school, which I had somewhat better relationships, more so with the secretaries and the principal and the assistant principal at the middle school. But at the high school, it was a whole different thing.
Yeah.
Because the band room was just so isolated. So I would have liked to have better relationships with those staff, but it's not like my mentor teacher did either.
Overall, get to know your secretaries, principal, assistant principal, any other admin, counselor,
This is speaking from the band director perspective.
and athletic director.
Yes.
And say thank you to them often. As a student teacher, thank them for letting you participate in their school environment and learn from you.
Yeah, because you had actually a pretty special experience where at the high school you were at, they didn't have a student teacher in who knows how long.
A few years at least.
You were the only student teacher in the building. So it was a very unique experience.
Yep.
All right, moving on to our next point of discussion, which is our final large subtopic about something in our teaching. It's the performances. The unique part about student teaching in music is we had to put on performances.
Yes.
So the first thing that we have is our festival experiences. We both had the opportunity to conduct a piece at festival, but our experience as far as working on those pieces was different. How was your experience?
Yes. I had, compared to Zachary, a more well-rounded experience working on this festival music because I got to work on every piece that we had prepared for festival.
Yes.
And I had alternated the rehearsals with my mentor teacher. So I got to actually teach a section of the piece of every single piece. Zachary from the podium. I had done sectionals as well on every piece, and I had officially conducted one piece. Once we got closer to festival performances, I was the one rehearsing that piece specifically.
Yeah.
Within the last week or few days, just to kind of tighten things up so the band could get used to seeing me on the podium.
Right.
But I had experience with every piece.
Yes.
Now, Zachary, you had something different.
Yeah, I only worked on one piece, a piece that I actually chose for them to perform. I only conducted and I only rehearsed from the podium that one piece. I had worked with sectionals on all three pieces that we performed at festival, but the only one I rehearsed from the podium was my piece that I conducted.
Yeah.
So
Which is better?
it doesn't matter.
There you go. That was the point.
Yeah, exactly. It both of our mentor teachers were first time mentors with having student teachers. So they both had, and they both bring into this experience what they had as a student teacher.
Sure.
So it could have been something that they grew up with, like when they were an intern and they just brought it into them, or just their own other philosophy of how to do things. Neither way is wrong.
Yeah.
Both are fine. It doesn't really matter.
The two of us had very different student teaching experiences, and they were both good.
Exactly. In different ways.
Yeah.
And that's all good. It brings other unique things to the table, especially for us. Like now that we're married, we bring together both of our experiences that we had, which were different, and we can make each other better.
Well, our entire time student teaching, we basically got two student teaching experiences out of this because I was learning from...
We were debriefing with each other.
Yes, I was learning from my own experiences, and then I got to learn from Zachary's as well.
And vice versa for me.
Yes, which was they were very different school districts.
Yes.
Yeah, so it was really good. I feel like we were just super fortunate to be engaged at that time, and to be like each other's best friends so that we could like tell each other everything. And then we were like, okay, no more band. I'm not talking about band anymore. We had to set that boundary.
Yes.
And still will have to.
Quick to note though, I would like to mention that being able to conduct a piece at festival is not every student teacher's experience. And that's sometimes at no fault of their own. Sometimes it's just, like we mentioned before, it's just how that mentor teacher chooses to run their experience. Neither way is bad, but that was just our experiences. We did get to conduct a piece at festival, but if you don't get to conduct a piece at festival or contest or whatever it's called in your state, that's not a bad thing.
You're probably doing something like equally as important related to the band during that time. Or you're learning for yourself.
Right. Yeah. If you're doing something administrative, that's equally as important as we talked about earlier. If you're helping run sectionals or taking individuals out and working with them, that's almost more important.
It also, everything needs to happen. All this stuff has to happen.
Exactly.
So who's going to do it kind of thing.
Yes. 100%. 100%.
Yeah. And that... I have more peace knowing that now after student teaching, but in the moment, that was hard to say that I wasn't going to be the person in charge all the time. And that's going to be a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people walking into an internship where they think that they're doing the best thing ever.
They think they're all that in a bag of chips.
And a bag of chips, or like a fruit cup or something.
Yeah, next best thing since sliced cheese.
Something more.
Bring out all the sayings.
Sliced cheese or sliced bread? I think it's sliced bread, Zachary.
It can be all of them. Okay. Sliced anything. There's multiple sayings.
Well, fresh
sliced bread, sliced cheese.
Fruit is
sliced cantaloupe.
Can I talk? Fresh fruit is more expensive now than bread or cheese. So someone would use that argument over, or you should use that argument of a fresh fruit cup over fresh bread.
Why are we talking about this?
I don't know.
All right, let's move on. We'll talk about this later.
No, we won't.
You are very right. Okay. Next point. There were some big lessons that I learned.
Yeah.
Through my festival experience at the middle school level.
Okay, please share. I'm waiting to hear
yes.
how you're going to handle this conversation.
So the middle school I was at, we brought them to festival and we received a rating that wasn't necessarily desirable. Obviously, we go to festival to score well. The score that we got wasn't what we hoped. It wasn't what we wanted. But I would say, looking at it, and granted, hindsight is 2020. I don't want to be a Monday morning quarterback, but the rating we got was deserved. It reflected the preparation that we had put into that performance.
How honorable of you guys to admit that.
Yeah, and we kind of realized, both me and my mentor teacher, we realized it pretty early on. Mm-hmm. Like almost immediately after that performance, I remember there was a moment where we whispered to each other, like, yeah, this isn't going to be good. Like we both knew, like we had the self-awareness and to know that, but
like as your character building, that's honorable, but also like you're doing a service to your students and yourself as a director for admitting that you were wrong. And how cool is that? That this was like the most special experience that I got to watch you walk through. Yeah.
So basically what I learned through that experience is because I knew I could do better than what I had done. Because what I had done with the high school, or helped to do with the high school, we got exactly the rating that we would hoped we wanted. We got the best rating. But with the middle school, I realized some of my faults in my own teaching, which is exactly, like I've said before, it's exactly what student teaching is.
Yeah.
Is learning how to become a better teacher.
Sure.
So like some of the specific things that I did is I put myself through this. I listened to the recording from festival, went through the score, and marked every single wrong note that I heard. It was a painful experience.
How many did you circle?
I don't want to mention the number. But it was a lot. And I know I could have done better. I know that was like one of my weaknesses was being able to pick out orally some of those things with the wins. But I know I could have done better, and that's no excuse. So that was just one of the things that helped made me realize I'm capable of finding these wrong notes, of finding what's wrong with a piece and being able to correct it. I just didn't do it. So that's the big lesson that I learned is when you hear something that's wrong, like a wrong note, this is the main thing we're talking about, is if when you hear a wrong note, correct the wrong note. Don't wait to when it's convenient, or I don't feel like correcting notes right now. So
it's a wrong note.
It's a wrong note. Correct it. If you hear it, just fix it. But I mean, it kind of goes back to a larger mindset that I had for too long. We stayed in the learning process of that particular piece for too long. I let wrong notes slide for too long because we were in the learning process. I didn't just correct them or pick them out.
Would you say that you went on autopilot during the teaching process? Like that was the part of your teaching where you were just kind of coasting?
100%. Yeah, exactly. That was 100%. I was on autopilot. Now, granted, there was a lot of other layers. I wasn't just neglecting things to neglect. Like, there's a lot of behavior problems and like other stuff we had to deal with.
Yes.
Which made teaching more difficult. But I went on autopilot and I didn't correct wrong notes when I know I heard them.
Yeah.
I didn't correct them just because I went on autopilot.
Yeah.
So that's the big lesson that I learned is hear a wrong note, just correct the darn thing.
Yeah.
Don't wait because it will only hurt you later. And it did. And I've learned that lesson. And I think I'm a better teacher because I admitted first off, I admitted to myself, yeah, you did not do this right. You did not do this well.
He admitted it to me. And then I married you.
And then you married me. So just admit it. Don't be afraid to admit when you have own faults in your teaching, and that will make you a better student teacher because that's what it's all about. In this internship experience, we are here to be better. We are here to learn. So let's learn. All right, moving on to the next portion of our discussion. And this next part is something that also it takes a lot of humility to admit. What are some of the regrets, Leah, that you have from your internship experience?
Ooh, okay. Number one, that I did not ask more questions about the administrative side of running a program.
Yes. 80-20.
80-20-ish.
Ish.
Administrative things are so important. Things like how to submit like a purchase request, like an order form or something when you need to buy something, how to ship a package.
All these logistics no one talks about.
That's different at every single school, but just to have a context, just to have a context of one of the ways of how to do it
Yeah.
and how to have those conversations with the secretaries or really it's the secretaries who
Whoever
you're going to
approves your purchases.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. What is this process and procedure for how to do this kind of thing?
Yeah.
Because we all know how to talk professionally over email, or at least we should by this point. If you've gotten to student teaching, that you should know how to write a professional email and
Right.
have difficult conversations with someone who you're hiring, either as a tech or something. But
Yeah.
having those conversations about how the school works and how the administrative side of like running a program and not just being a teacher, but it's like almost running a business. That it's scary that all of that.
You are the CEO of Name Your School Band Program.
And
That's exactly what it is.
No
You are
one
a
teaches
CEO.
you how to do that. So I wish I asked those questions in my student teaching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
That's literally what your student teaching is there for.
Exactly. It's for you to learn how to do the job. The only on-the-job training that you'll ever get in your career.
There you go.
That's exactly what it is.
Not saying that you won't have those resources later when you do get a job.
Right.
There will be those people, and you're going to find them eventually.
Yeah. Like my mentor teacher, I talk to him. I will call him all the time. Like,
Yeah.
we also have that good of a relationship too. So
I want to say that there's no stupid questions, but also just think before you speak.
it's the same thing with your teaching.
Like, yeah, just like think about it for a second. I mean, you can vouch for me. Like, I throw stupid questions at you.
Yes. I feel them
And
a
then
lot.
you're like, okay, good thing you asked that to me and not like someone important.
And same thing for me to you.
Yeah. So find those people that it's safe to ask those questions to.
Yeah, exactly. One of the big regrets that I had with my student teaching was not being more intentional with my time in front of the ensemble.
Okay.
And not just flying by the seat of my pants. That was the big thing. Again, like I learned with the festival experience I had with the middle school, not autopiloting.
Yeah.
Be intentional with that time you're getting.
Yeah.
I regret not planning a little bit more thoroughly, not just getting caught up in learning the procedures of the program, but thinking deeper about how I personally can become a better teacher and what the steps were to achieve that status. So it's just thinking a little bit more critically about how to deliver instruction and not just rehearsing the ensemble, not just going through the motions like, yep, we're just rehearsing. We're just,
This is it.
not in my case, correcting wrong notes, but we're just going through the motions, not doing that, being intentional. Like we need to learn how to do this so we can do that. And we need to learn how to do this so that way, even not just in this piece, but when we learn another piece like it, you'll know how to play in this style, play this articulation. It carries over.
What are the concepts that I need to teach my band so they can do this in every context?
Yes, that was good. Don't hit the fake plant.
Sorry, just fanning the flame over here.
Yes, that was exactly it. That was a good way to put it right there. So, like I said, didn't think I did a bad job. I just think I could have done better.
Sure.
So, that was the
Yeah.
big thing with me.
Same here.
All right. Moving on to the last portion here, our takeaways, our final overview, our takeaways from our experiences as student teachers. We're not going to go in depth on any of these.
Rapid fire.
We're just going to say one, go back and forth. We each have 3. So, Leah, what is your first takeaway?
Professionalism means being respectful instead of being right. And that goes for being a good human too.
I've already mentioned it before. Curriculum is everything. Pacing, sequencing, goals/expectations, all of it. It all matters.
Number 2, you have to give your students an incredible amount of energy if you want even a little bit of it back.
My number 2, if you want to become a better teacher, you can't just coast. You actually have to put in extra time outside of the school day.
Number 3 for me, the only way you're going to be a better teacher is by constantly reflecting and evaluating.
Number 3 for me, take advantage of the opportunity to learn how to teach something outside of your comfort zone or current range of skills. This is the time to become a better teacher is through your student teaching. I feel like we both can say we got better as teachers and as educators because of the time that we took during this experience.
Yeah, we milked this for all it was worth. And that was our
100%.
plan going in. And if we just kind of coasted, like, yeah, we would have gotten better, but man, we would not have been the teachers we are now if we didn't put all of ourselves into that experience. And I know there's life events that happen that come up, and some people can't be everything in their student teaching that they wanted to be, but we had the blessing to just give all of ourselves into that experience and to share it with each other.
Absolutely. Yeah. I will look at the end of the day, I will look very fondly on the experiences that I had in my internship. I think it helped me become a better teacher. It helped me become more aware as an educator. And I think it is something that I will look back on in my career in the future as something that was very helpful. So Leah, thank you so much for coming onto the channel and discussing student teaching with us. I think this was a very valuable discussion and a lot of good information was presented. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I'm really glad that we could finally debrief this. It took a handful of times to get us to sit down together to do this, but I'm really thankful that we ended up doing this, talking through a lot of things.
Yeah, this is exactly what you just said. It was debriefing our experiences, and I think this was a very, very valuable discussion. So thank you.
Thank you.
Y'all, I really hope you enjoyed part 1 of a 2-part mini series my wife and I are doing about our student teaching experiences. Because in this video, we really dove deep about the specific experiences the both of us had, what we learned throughout, and what we wished we had done differently. And in part 2, we'll be going more in depth about the specific tips that the both of us have for future student teachers. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe so that way you don't miss part 2. Unless of course you're watching in the future when part 2 is already out, in which case it'll be linked in the description down below. Until next time though, I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you in the next video.